So today's topic is Enchanted Education for Teenagers. And I'm assuming that those of you who are here have already seen the talk I gave on the Enchanted Education for families. If this was something that is of particular interest to you and your group of friends, can you share this broadcast right now? What you'll want to do is swipe right on the iPhone and click on the share button, and then you can tap share with my followers or Twitter or Facebook, or Android, swipe up and do the same thing, tap on share with followers. Thank you so much. If you heard about this broadcast without being a follower of mine, you can tap on the little man icon on your screen, and that will bring my name up. Tap on my name and see if you're following me. If you're not, you can go ahead and click the follow button, and that way you'll be notified of future broadcasts. So it's great to have everybody today. I'm testing out a new microphone mixer and was able to adjust the sound level. So I'm assuming you can all hear me clearly and it's not buzzing or, too screechy and shouty. That's the goal. All right. So deep breath. It's great to be with all of you on a Monday. Today we are going to talk about those pesky teenagers. How about we hear how many of you have teens and how many you've got? I remember very, very well that when my oldest, I have 5 kids and they are now 28 down through age 19. And when my oldest hit the teen years, I was under this impression that because we had been so close from 0 to 12, that 13 to 18 would just be this magical continuation. Oh yeah, look at this rolling in, 15, 12, 14, 2 in the teen years, 1 teen with 5 coming. Exactly. And so what I experienced with Noah when he suddenly hit the teen years is it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. I had believed this narrative that if we were bonded and close and I had been attentive to his needs up to age 12, this would just magically carry over into the teen years and we would stay very close and I would always be able to respond to his needs and he would always feel connected to me. It was a shock to my system to realize that the teen years are not like the first 12 years of life. In fact, they can be quite challenging and take a parent by surprise. I don't know if many of you are experiencing that, but yes, somebody wrote it's an evolving relationship. Exactly, because teenagers have a priority, and that is on proving to themselves that they're going to grow up and be successful on their own. And we're going to look at that today. How do we bring these principles of, pixie dust and enchantment and magic to teenagers, to those kids who defy some of the logic of the adult world, who are no longer as cuddly and guileless as your smaller children? It's not unusual for both parents and teenagers to be mystified by the loss of innocence, the feeling that, oh, remember when pill bugs and snails were the most fascinating creatures on a walk, or we could all rally around Disney films or anything along those lines. What we have today, hey Leslie, what we have in the teen years is a transition where they are now experiencing the world through a more complex lens. And for the first time, they don't only believe you. They have other sources of information that give them a picture of how the world works. And for the first time, they're not sure you have the only say on what the world is all about. It's the first time that, to use, an academic term, a hermeneutic of suspicion enters into their experience. It means that they are interpreting your words now with a little hint of suspicion. They are wondering if what you're saying stands up outside the 4 walls of the house. So let's look at what that means then to bring a homeschool into the teen life and have it still produce this engagement, this joy, this fascination that we experienced more effortlessly, not without effort, but more effortlessly when we were dealing with very small children. So I don't know if you remember, but in the very first Periscope I did on the Enchanted Education, which, by the way, took me by surprise. The ideas had a little bit of virality to them. Suddenly, everyone was talking about how do I enchant math and how do I sprinkle pixie dust over language arts all over the internet, which was very satisfying to see that that idea actually had correspondence, not just with me, but with you. So that's why we're doing this today. And at the time, I read a quote by Guy Kawasaki from his book called Enchantment, which I had not yet read. So what I did is I decided to go get a copy because I thought it might be worth seeing the context of his remarks. And sure enough, brilliant. Now, he writes about business. This isn't about raising kids or homeschool or anything of that sort. But he sort of zeroed in on this concept of enchantment. I didn't even know this book existed when I first did the other Periscope. But I want to read you a little story because weirdly, I think this applies so beautifully to teens. So ready? Little story time with Julie. This is from Guy Kawasaki's book, Enchantment. What is enchantment? When Karen Mueller, filmmaker and author, was in the Peace Corps from 1987 to 1989, she dug wells and built schools in a village in the Philippines. One night, 17 members of the New People's Army, the armed wing of the Communist Party of the Philippines, came to her hut to interrogate her. Earlier that day, villagers had warned her that this was going to happen. So, she collected two precious commodities, sugar and coffee. When the MPA arrived, she exclaimed, "Thank God you're here. I've been waiting all day. Please, have some coffee. Leave your guns at the door." Her reaction baffled the leader of the group, but he took off his gun and sat down for a cup of coffee. She avoided an interrogation or something worse because, according to Mueller, you can't interrogate someone you're having coffee with. Mueller did not react with anger, indignation, or panic, which is how I would have reacted. Instead, she touched an emotion in the leader of the group and transformed the situation from brute force and intimidation to conversation and communication. She delighted him with her unexpected hospitality and changed his heart, his mind, and his actions. In short, she enchanted him. How ridiculous is this book? Have I not been saying, take your kids out for coffee, make tea to go with poetry, light a candle to do copy work? What is it about context that creates a disarming with the people in our lives? What is it about hospitality, that basic dignity of sharing a meal or sharing an intimate moment that disarms us? Literally disarmed this man. He put his gun at the door. When we're thinking about our teenagers, sometimes we are in that adversarial dynamic. And so today, the primary idea I want you to take away about enchantment with teens is this notion of disarming. It's magical assist. The idea that the education you want your child to have comes from a different space than coercion, discipline, punishment, control, knowing better than they know. Instead, it is again a focus on context and relationship, but in a different kind of perspective than what you had when you had small children. Okay? So, who remembers I gave you 4 key terms that, this is a little quiz, but nobody gets anything wrong. So we'll just see if we can do this as a group. What are the 4 terms that I associated with the Enchanted Education? There are 4 key ideas or elements that create enchantment in the home. Can you remember any of them? One of our enchanted scopes by one of the BraveWriter moms. Oh, here's 3 of them. Risk, adventure, mystery. Good, good, good. We've got 3. What's the 4th? Surprise. Oh, you guys, you really pay attention. Yes, risk, mystery, adventure, and surprise. Take a little screenshot of my beautiful doodle if you want to have one for yourself. Got it? Okay, good. So enchantment depends on surprise, mystery, risk, and adventure. But here's what I want you to know. Surprise and mystery seem to appeal the most to small children. It's not that surprise and mystery are not a part of teen years. Believe me, they are. We'll look at that. But there is something about the child in the home who's in this very safe space with his parents or her parents, and you create a little element of surprise, you hide a little trinket, you uncover the mystery of birds coming to the bird feeder in the backyard. This creates enchantment. This is what's exciting for the child. And so with a teenager, however, surprise and mystery are still there. But the greater need is for what I've always said in every conference I've ever spoken at. The craving for teens is risk and adventure. These two. So I have them broken up. We're going to look at it again. The younger years, surprise and mystery. The older years, risk and adventure. Okay? Did everyone see that? There you go. So why is that? What is it about teens that prefer or need or crave risk and adventure? Well, first, I want us to look at you. Let's look at you as a parent, as an adult who has embarked on this task of home education. I have often called the home educators of today the hippies of the 21st century. I've called you the flower children, the stick it to the man kind of group. You may be wearing denim jumpers if you're from the 1980s or 90s. You may be conservative in your political views. But when it comes down to it, there's this little thread of, tattoo, little thread of radical hippie-ish, I drive a Harley Davidson underneath all that skin. And that is your willingness to defy convention or the status quo in order to achieve your goals. And because of that, you feel like you are on an adventure the whole time you're homeschooling. And as a result, you find yourself in this joyful experience of risk. And that keeps you going because you're mature. And mature people need stimulation too. So the way you've done it is you've assessed all of the educational choices. You have digested the risks involved with educating your own children, defying the state, sticking up for your children and your family, and you have this internal experience of adventure in the four walls of your home. Okay, now let's contrast this with the children in your family. If you have children who have been homeschooled since kindergarten, or maybe they went to school for a bit and you pulled them out and now they've been home for 4, 5, 6 years. By the time they get to a high school level, some of these kids have been in the same house or at least a home for 12 years. They don't experience their life as a risk. It's a very secure, protected space. It's secure, loving. It's a fabulously nurturing, can be, should be, we'll talk about that in a minute, space for them to grow up in. But it's not risky. It's not even their adventure. They didn't choose homeschool. Parents choose homeschool. Kids just do what the parents say. Yes, so Leslie says, but boring. Well, this is the thing. What you could sustain with mystery and surprise within the four walls of your home, by the time you have teens, the walls are closing in. That is not the same space for them that it continues to be for you. I would also submit this. By the time you have some teenagers, you're a little bored. The challenge is a little less exhilarating than it was when you were working with a kindergartner and a third grader and a fifth grader. How many of you agree with this experience? Have you had this experience? I know it was true for me. There is a repetitiveness to having multiple children move through similar paces for achievement. And so by the time you have teens, everybody is experiencing, oh my goodness. Yes, somebody says the idealism of you is gone. Oh, we're getting there, Leslie. Yes, second generation homeschooler. Oh, she really knows. Yes, so the cycle of adventure that you used to be a part of has sort of faded out. There's a disillusionment that comes for everyone. But here's the problem. Instead of diagnosing that sort of adventure cycle that has sort of run its course and maybe needs an injection of something new, We sometimes diagnose the problem and locate it in the teenager. It's like, you're not obeying, you're not interested, why aren't you committed, you should be more independent, I expect more of you than this, I've got all these little kids to take care of, why aren't you fulfilling your obligations to school? And we're wishing for them to take over the experience of homeschool and make it meaningful for themselves. And yet what's happening is our children are begging us for something else, but they don't know how to put it in words. So I want to show you the goal of the teenage life, okay? Here's the only thing teenagers are about. To prove to themselves, I can be an adult. That's it. That's their only goal. From 13 to 18 or 19, this is what they're trying to prove to themselves. Will they know that that's possible if their only experience is living in your house? How will they know they can make it outside the house if they never leave the house? Just think about it. They need some experiences out from under you because they have to prove that they can make it without you at some point. This doesn't mean that you stop homeschooling. I'm just seeding some ideas for you to start considering. Here's the crazy thing about teens though. Not only do they want to prove to themselves, I can be an adult, on their bad days, they actually act like this. Can I just be a child a little bit longer? How many have experienced that? They toggle between this craving for independence and autonomy and the sheer terror of taking full responsibility for their adult selves. And so you'll have some children who will really welcome the safety of being home and not risking. There's a really surprising statistic that I couldn't find about homeschooled kids. They tend as a group to get their driver's licenses later than public school kids. They hold back some kids from asserting that independence. And then there's the flip side. You've got kids who are at home who are begging to leave to do something different, and a parent's anxiety about how the world might shape them overwhelms the need of that child, and the child doesn't get a chance to find out. So this is really critical. I want to put it in this other framework. We're not just talking about family values. We're actually talking about the developmental stages of growth, and we want to honor those. We do not want our children to be unfairly protected from finding out they can make it in the world. We also don't want them unduly anxious about going out into the world. We have this twin responsibility. And it's true in public schools too. There are parents who are dealing with these same issues with their teens who are safe and comfortable in a school environment and are terrified of the job market or going to college. So this is not an exclusively homeschool issue. And I don't want you to think I'm pathologizing homeschool. I'm not. I'm a fan. So here we go. Let's keep going on my points. So we now have established risk and adventure are good for teens. They want to prove that they can be an adult. They're also sometimes running back into the safety of the home saying, but can I stay a child a little longer? Okay. Risk and adventure for a teen have certain properties, and we're going to look at what those are. But first, what I want to talk to you about are two terms that I think are really important to unpack. So first of all, I've talked about enchantment, the enchanted education. Let's look at that in a fuller way. Enchantment then is not just about, clearing the coffee table and leaving a game for your children to play, or doing arts and crafts in the kitchen for your history lesson. For a high schooler, enchantment looks different. And I said before, positive enchantment starts with a disarming. It's not coming combatively, but it's also not coming manipulatively. Teens can smell manipulation at 10 paces. They are not going to be tricked into math. They're not going to be tricked into a close relationship with you. They literally need to have the experience that you are for them, that you are on their side, that they can't disappoint you. I remember when Noah said to me that even though he knew he had permission to mess up with writing or to mess up in college, because we had told him that many, many times. He looked at me and his father, who had master's degrees and were writers, and he knew that secretly we wanted that for him. And so it was difficult for him to fail in front of us. I remember that experience with my own father around math. I went to him for help with algebra. He gave me perfect explanations that I could not understand. I asked him to explain it again a different way. He didn't know how. And I suddenly had shame run through me, not because I was failing, but because I couldn't give him the satisfaction of being a successful parent with me. It produced huge amounts of anxiety. I felt like I was failing to be the daughter he needed me to be so he could feel good about our relationship. Sometimes we are so busy thinking that our kids are rejecting us, we forget that at the core, they really want to be close to us. They want the connection to be strong. Think back to your own parents right now, and I know all of us can do this. When was the time that you knew that your parent needed you to affirm them as a parent and you couldn't do it? There was some limit in you. You couldn't live up to whatever it was they imagined for you. It's a crushing experience. And we can deaden the pain by smoking pot or going off with the radical group or skipping school or even getting straight A's to hide our shame. But that's what's going on in the teen years. And any time you have this conflict with your own child, one of the fastest routes back to enchantment is to remember how you wish your parents had treated you under similar circumstances. So the first part of enchantment is getting in the shoes of the teen and remembering what that felt like. Enchantment leads to cooperation. So if you have a child who's not cooperating, you get to look back and ask, well, what's going on here? Leslie points out that empathy is key in the teen dynamic. Well, it absolutely is. This is what we're urging. In fact, it's a level of empathy you've never yet experienced. It's the hardest empathy. This is your memory of all the mistakes you made in your teen life, combined with this overpowering love you have for your child who's now just big and gangly, and then wanting to protect them from going through any pain whatsoever. And that mixture is so combustible that we hurt our teens in the midst of trying to be the lovingest person we know how to be. So the positive enchantments, they lead to a laying down of arms. It's a disarming. If you have armed conflict right now with your teen, we have to include some enchantment to get them back. And we're going to get there, I promise. Enchantment also leads to being open to the new. And here's the funny thing. Teens are often already open to the new. It's you who has to become more open to the new. That's your next challenge in the enchantment stage. You don't set the terms anymore. It's not up to you to decide what they read, listen to, and view. It's your privilege to be a part of what they listen to, read, and view. So you can get to know them and be enchanted by them all over again. And if you look lovingly on your teen and see who they are reflected back to you, even through information that you don't understand, they feel loved. It's enchanting. It changes the dynamic. Positive enchantment creates focused attention and self-discipline. Now, isn't that the thing that we all think we want for our kids? That they'll suddenly be self-disciplined? But they'll be self-disciplined about the things they care about. And we're going to get there in just a minute. And then lastly, enchantment leads to mutuality and trust. There is an increased sense of teamwork as opposed to parental leadership. You are shifting roles. It's, you know, there's like that phrase that says, I decrease that you might increase. That's what's going on in the teen years. You are decreasing that they might increase. That's what it is. And lastly, maybe I said lastly already, but this really is the lastly on the positive enchantments. You are casting a vision for the future, but not at the expense of the present. You are casting a vision for the future, but not at the expense of the present. Right now matters. The whole 4 years of high school are not about college. They're about high school. They're about 12 to 18. That's all they're about. And yes, we are working to prepare them for adulthood, but we don't want to lose this moment where they get to enjoy going back and forth between being a child and being an adult, and being a child and being an adult. Yes, you are decreasing, so they might increase. And that's as scary for you as it is for them. That's a scary proposition for the whole family, okay? So don't feel bad if you're terrified. Who isn't? My God, this used to be a baby. This used to be your little cuddly toddler who rubbed his hair under your chin, who wanted to sit in your lap. And now they're like secretive or going off into a corner and reading a book or hiding something from you. And you're like, how did this ever happen? It's scary. It is scary. They're getting in a car and they're driving places where, crazy people drive, right? Like they are out from under you. It's terrifying. And you're justified in being afraid. But here's the problem. I'm going to level with you because this is serious and I need you to hear this. Enchantments can also be disenchantments. You know how in fairy tales a spell gets cast and initially it might be for good, but then there is that moment where the spell becomes a curse. It's a disenchantment. It takes away the properties of enchantment. We do that in our families. One of the chief ways that we do it with our teens is what I like to call prophecies of doom. Prophecies of doom. A prophecy of doom is this: if you don't finish this course in math, you will never get into college, and you will spend the rest of your life flipping burgers for McDonald's. That's a prophecy of doom. Another one, if I can't trust you with this small piece of responsibility, how can I ever trust you at night when you're alone and away from me? Another one, I trusted you. You broke my trust. It will take 3 years before I can ever believe you again. Another one, you lied to me. You're a liar. How many of you have done those? Okay, I've done them all. I want you to know. This is like a rite of passage of parenting, I think. Sometimes the prophecy of doom just erupts from your chest like an alien. It's not as though you knew this was coming. It's the deepest part of your maternal fear taking over. And you are doing all the things that you used to do for your babies, but now the scale is so big. So when your toddler was running into the street, you ran and scooped up that toddler and you brought him in. And he might kick and scream, but you felt justified because he wasn't mature enough to know not to run into the street. And you might have even given him, one of those little toddler talking tos. You can't run in the street. That's where you're going to get killed by a car. When mommy says, come, you have to come. This is what we did, for the first 10 years of their lives. And so the transition does not come easily. To say to this bigger person, I'm going to put you in a car and send you out there, right? More like, why didn't you text me? How could you not remember I needed to hear your voice? I can't sleep until you're in the house. These are all things we do out of just deep love that feel suffocating to a poor teen. All right, so prophecies of doom. That's one of the first disenchantments. And here's the thing. What if you tell a teen, if you don't pass algebra and go to college, you're going to flip burgers? And then what if they do? What if they do? Does that make them a bad person, unworthy of your love and support? Noah worked in food service, still does, for the first 10 years of adulthood. That was his primary source of employment. How valuable was it for me to say, well, if you don't go to college and complete, you'll flip burgers? All that does is project shame into the future. What if, and I did make this shift eventually. What if instead, as I finally realized and said to him, you know what? You have a pretty great life. Like, you love gaming, you have a girlfriend, you read every book you've ever wanted to read, you have this social network of gamers and friends online, and you pay for it by working at this, basically stress-free job, making pizza. And you get to have the life you want without the pressure of school. That's pretty awesome. Like, isn't that a better way to look at our kids than to have like this imagined image of who they're going to become and then holding them accountable to it before they've even figured out if they want that for themselves? So that's what I'm talking about. And I've done them all. This is a confessional. This is not a directional. I'm learning just like you. And fortunately, I was given 5 kids. So I got 5 cracks at the bat. And I got a lot better at it the longer I was at it. So, and tons of therapy. Okay. Another way that we create or cast negative enchantments is through suspicion. Constantly wanting to know what's going on in the mind of our boys and girls who are now teenagers, as though we should know, because we needed to be a pioneer into their brains to protect them from a thought. I remember very much Noah listened to a song. This was when he was in high school. He was listening to Nirvana. Okay, now I missed the 80s and 90s. I didn't live in the country, and then I was a weird homeschooler, so I didn't keep up with the cultural currents of music or movies or anything, right? I was one of those people. We didn't even have a TV. So Noah now is in high school, and he's sort of looking back at 2 decades of music, and he got attracted to Nirvana, who all I knew was a terrible band. The lead singer killed himself. They were into drugs. They can't be safe for my kids. I found out that he had listened to a song called Rape Me, and I banned him from ever listening to it again. I didn't know the words, didn't know a thing about it, lost my cool, completely yelled at him for listening to it after I had said not to. And to his credit, he believed better of me than I did of myself. He came to me and said, "Mom, you don't understand the lyrics. The lyrics aren't about rape. They're about the paparazzi and the way the media was raping him." And I was like, I don't care. It's a terrible song. They're a terrible band. I was trying to protect him. And one day I'm driving along listening to a classic rock station, and the song comes on the radio, and I actually start listening, and I just broke down and cried because he was right. And I'm a writer. I understand metaphor. I understand complexity. The same thing with Rage Against the Machine. At the time, they weren't really my politics, but when I finally listened to the lyrics with Noah, I was so impressed with their sort of fist-pumping commitment to their political perspective. Of course that's appealing to a boy in his teens. Of course that music is awesome. I was going to U2 concerts. How could I not understand his fascination with Rage Against the Machine? There is this transition and this amazing opportunity for you as a parent of teenagers, if you can embrace it. It means yielding again the way you did as a teen and 20-something to sexuality, to the sensuality of a beat, to the complexity of ideas. How many of you, for example, hold the same beliefs today in your 30s, 40s, and 50s that you held when you were 16? Anyone? How many? Identical, what you thought was real and true and you believed was in your at 16, you still today, nothing has changed. Anyone? Okay, I'm going to take silence as a no. 16-year-olds are changeable. I like to tell at conferences all the time, don't worry about what your kids believe at 16, 17, and 18. I promise you it will change. I promise you. So it's okay if they believe crazy things, because you did too. They're immature. They are experimenting with belief systems the way that you experience and experiment with foreign foods. You're just testing them, tasting them, seeing if they feel comfortable. And in fact, the most curious teens develop the widest palate. They're able to dialogue with a variety of views the same way they could go from restaurant to restaurant tasting different foods. So, of course, it's more interesting that they're having thoughts that are, opinionated as though they're absolutely right. It's more interesting they're having those thoughts than it is what the thoughts are. Try not to be intimidated. I remember in college when I read the Communist Manifesto in one of my classes, and I called my dad to say, this is a pretty good book. I had no idea. I mean, I was raised in the Cold War 70s, and I'm reading the Karl Marx, and I'm like kind of agreeing with him. And my dad sort of laughingly freaked out because he was a really big Republican. But when I look back, I didn't become a communist. I was just fascinated. It was just interesting to hear it from the horse's mouth, not just pre-digested by the news and by my dad. And that's what's happening. They're making their own way, and they're going to create some of their own opinions, just like you don't share all the same views as your parents. You don't all hold the same political, socio-ecological, economical, religious, educational, parenting views of your parents. And you take pride in that. And so will your kids. They're not going to be replicas of you. So those are the negative enchantments. So how then are we bridging ourselves into these teen years from the magical, early childhood years? How do we handle the more dangerous, complicated problems that sometimes come along with having teens? And believe me, all of my friends have stories. Every single one of every parental style. So I'm warning you, things are going to happen that you can't control. And how you handle that moment is the difference between being close to your kids or alienating them. So let's talk about the bridge to your teens. All right? I have, let's see, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. I got sick of numbers. So I have A through H categories for the bridge. And the first one that I want to talk about is what we call the Beehag. Who's heard of the Beehag? Big, hairy, audacious goals. This is a management term that is used by a lot of companies to inspire their employees to do really big, audacious, creative things for the company. Big, hairy, audacious goal is just what it sounds like, a goal. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll fulfill it, but you're going to take the Beehag and run with it. You're going to go as far as you can. I was listening last night, amazingly, on Periscope to Elizabeth Gilbert live, and she said something that reminded me of the Beehag. She said her publisher tells their community of editors that it's okay if they fail, as long as they fail in increasingly interesting ways. That's how I kind of think of the Beehag, okay? A big, hairy, audacious goal. It's okay if you fail, as long as it's interesting. But the goal is to take a big risk. And of course, didn't we just say that they love risk? So with my kids, I sat down and I asked them, I was eager. I heard about this idea when my kids were mostly like junior high and early high school. Oh, thanks. And so I sat down with each one and asked, what's something we could work on that would be really cool for you? Well, for Jacob, he wanted to go to space camp. He was enamored with the sky. He had a telescope. He had heard about this space camp in NASA, and he wanted to go. We did not have the money. So we brainstormed, and Jake's dad, John, he said to him, well, you know what? I think a cookie business in the neighborhood could raise money. Now, Jacob was like 10 or 11 at the time, maybe even younger. He was around 10. And he said, we'll get a clipboard, we'll go door to door, and we'll tell them that you're going to make, a dozen cookies, and you'll charge $5 for each dozen, and we'll just save it up in a bank account, and you can do it until you've got the space camp money. People will want to do that. Now, I scoffed. I thought, who's going to do that? They'll do it once, and then what? Well, would you believe that this little cookie business that Jacob started not only raised enough money for him to go to space camp, which was $850 plus the airfare, but it also continued. He handed it down to Katrin, who continued it all the way through her junior year of high school. And this little business raised thousands of dollars. The only thing we didn't do, because, you know, the dad and I are both literature people, is we didn't turn it into an opportunity to teach accounting. That's the limit of our experience of starting a business. But you could do that. You could have your child keep an account and make sure they have checks and balances. We actually bought the supplies and just let him keep all of the money that he earned from his efforts without buying the supplies. But the point is, he had this target. He had something to work towards, and we supported him in making that happen. He went to space camp, had a fabulous time, and decided he didn't want to become an astronaut. Total success, in my opinion. Johanna's Beehag at the time was to host a big vintage dance ball, a la Jane Austen. And of course, I couldn't imagine how we were going to pull that off, but I decided not to limit her, and we started looking for vintage dance opportunities in Cincinnati. We found one organization that actually teaches vintage dance to adults. All I had were kids. I asked them, is it possible to sign up my daughter for vintage dance? And they said, as long as you sign her up with one of her brothers, we can take them together because you have to be similar heights. So I was all down with that, but I did not have the $8 a week times 2 to put my kids in those classes. Literally didn't have that kind of money. So I went back to the leaders and I said, is there a way we can do some service for this organization that would cover our tuition? They were so thrilled that my children might carry on the legacy of vintage dance into their lives. They waived the fees and asked us to put brochures in mailboxes once a week for the entire semester that we did vintage dance. And at the end of the semester, these adults gave Johanna the fanciest gown. They invited Noah and Johanna to the ball, and they had the full experience, exactly how Johanna imagined it. And that was satisfying. She didn't have to create her own ball. That was enough. I share these two specifics, and we have others, but I share these two in particular because neither Jacob nor Johanna went into those as career fields. If I leave you with one thing today, it's this. The value is for today. We do not know where it will lead. We are giving them the tools to imagine, to go after what they want, and to bring it into existence so they can do that again and again and again. Risk and adventure. And you don't have to have money. You don't have to have money. You have to have heart. You have to have coming alongside. That's your job. I always say the thing a parent can do for a kid is drive them places, put them in touch with resources, and find money. Those are your jobs. Your child's job is to take advantage of those 3 properties to do the thing they're so excited about. So if you can bring that together for your kids, they're going to have an amazing life. And that life at home is giving them the meta skills, the skills that they can take to the thing they really want to do that they don't even know they want to do yet. Because like what 11-year-old says, you know what, I want to grow up and be the High Commissioner of Human Rights at the UN. What 11-year-old says, you know, social work with immigrants, that's my jam. They don't. They only get there after they've had many experiences of making what they care about come into being. And they need your adult support to make it happen. The same way they learn to drive is the same way they should be able to learn anything else. You in the passenger seat, you know, slamming on the brake and cheering them on. So the first one then was Beehags, okay? The second, letter B, this is the bridge between you and your teens, is experimentation. Experimentation. I'm going to bring it up close. Go ahead and, you know, take a picture if you want to have a copy of each of my little hand-done PowerPoints. Experimentation. That means you have to be willing to have risk. What does experimentation look like? Well, it means they get to try something and reject it. Experimenting usually means it doesn't last. Now they might really hook in and decide this is for me, but it also might mean, nope, this wasn't for me. They have to find out. Noah played lacrosse. He walked onto the team as a sophomore in high school, having never played a single team sport. Did not know how to play lacrosse. He was attracted only to the stick and the fact that boys in his area were on these teams, and it looked fun to him. So expensive. In fact, I often joke that I can trace every product in BraveWriter to a moment when I needed to pay a fee for a child. I think that year, we added a class. Like literally didn't have the money. So I investigated creativity in me and paired it with Noah's enthusiasm, and we got him to lacrosse. The same thing happened when he was interested in Shakespeare acting. We got the family to contribute money to pay for the fee, and we put him in Shakespeare camp, and Johanna as well. These are opportunities to learn skills and to become people that they weren't before. It wasn't a Beehag, it was an opportunity. It was an experiment, and they decide whether or not they like it. So experimentation. Try and help them broaden out of the predicted thing that they always do, okay? Letter C, value risky thinking. Value risky thinking. Okay, this might be one of the harder ones for parents. How many of you are afraid your kids are going to have thoughts that upset you, that contradict the family perspective? Anyone want to take a risk and be honest about it? I mean, most of us are worried about the books they might read, the way they interpret religion, what their identity is, how they want to be educated, whether or not they embrace our politics, the family political point of view. Typically, yes, I'll hold the card up again. Value risky thinking. And what I'm saying here is this. Whereas your young children used their bodies to explore, yes, exactly. They will want to see movies. They'll want to see websites online that are scary to you. What little children use their bodies to explore, teens use their minds. And there are some pretty explosive worlds out there for them to look into. And we can't control them all. We can put blocks on the computers. Our local school district has this elaborate filter at the school. And Liam, who went to public school for 2 years, told me that any boy worth his salt knew how to get around that firewall. And not a single teacher did. This is the generation who can do whatever they want online. They know how to get behind firewalls, especially these kids who are interested in programming. So there is a limit to how well you can, quote, protect your kids. Not only that, some of what they are exploring and discovering is already happening, and then we come in and try and stop it. So like, let's say they get exposed, in the old days, it would be things like your boy gets exposed to Playboy magazine by a kid in the street, right? And so then you say, oh my gosh, we can't let him be near that boy anymore. But the exposure already happened. It's not like those images go away because you eliminate the boy. Noah had already listened to that song by Nirvana. Now telling him he couldn't listen to it was like too late. It had already happened. So what we want to do, more than that, anything, is to value the thinking or value the exploration or the experimentation so that we can actually have conversations about it. We're not trying to tell them what to think as much as be dialogue partners in their thinking. And some of that is uncomfortable. Some of that is challenging. Okay. The next one is letter D, leave the house. This is a little person running out the front door. That's my wonderful drawing. In addition to experimenting, Beehags, valuing their reading of wide variety of materials and watching movies that you didn't think they should be interested in, they need to get out of your house. They need to go places. They could go, to a co-op. They could go to junior college at age 16. they could go on a trip in the summer to work with orphans in Mexico. I don't know what happened, but it really wouldn't connect for me for several minutes. So welcome back. Oh my gosh. Yay, you're back. Yay, yay, yay. Okay, let's get myself reorganized here so you can see me. We probably needed a break. Did everybody like run to the bathroom and get something to drink? Because I'm getting worn out of my own voice here. Okay, I'm going to review really quickly for people who are new. And for those of you who didn't see our little Kanye puppets, Kanye West puppets for, you know, the Enchanted Education for Teens. Holla, holla. Okay, where are we? So here's what we've said. I'm going to review for anyone who's new. I'm Julie Bogart from BraveWriter. And, oh, Rebecca, you're cute. I'm breaking the internet. I doubt it. But anyway, Julie Bogart from BraveWriter. I run a company that helps parents homeschool their kids in writing and language arts. I also started a community called the Homeschool Alliance, where I offer coaching and encouragement to parents who are home educators. And we all come together to talk about these kinds of ideas in a lot more depth. I started by saying that teenagers have one goal, and that is to prove to themselves that they can be adults. Occasionally, on bad days, however, they just want to stay a child a little longer. Not only that, the Enchanted Education includes surprise, mystery, risk, and adventure. Teens are big on risk and adventure. That's the core goal for a teen. So we talked about enchantments being the things that we say and do that help children who are teens feel close to us, to trust us, and to take learning risks. And then we talked about disenchantments, how we drive them away with prophecies of doom, telling them that their futures are going to be horrible if they don't do the things we tell them to do. And so I suggested we create a bridge to our teens from our worried, conscientious selves to the people they are becoming. And here's what we did. We walked our way through a list. We talked about the big, hairy, audacious goal, where we give our teens something exciting, risky, and adventurous to work toward. We talked about being okay with experimentation, whether that's in their values or in their activities or in their explorations. We suggested that it's important to value their risky thinking. They're not going to be identical duplicates for our beliefs, but they may discuss them and engage them and look at them through a new lens. And we're excited about that. They also sometimes become better people than you are. That has happened to me with pretty much all 5 of my kids. So let them do a lot of thinking and then you get to grow. I've become a much better person for having them. I think the last thing I said was make sure they get out of the house in some meaningful way. They don't have to go to high school, but they do need to get out of the house and experience a bigger world than your house. And that led me to this. This is where the internet crashed, to the build a boat principle. I have a friend, I mentioned her in the very first Periscope about the Enchanted Education. Her name is Dottie Christensen. And her oldest daughter homeschooled all the way through. But she had a second child who spent some time in high school. And I was worried about this, new development. I didn't know what my kids would do. And I said, but Dottie, don't you remember, like we've read all these books about unschooling. Remember that family where they built a boat from scratch in the basement? Don't you think your kids should be doing something like that? I feel like I'm robbing my kids of this big adventure of, tackling something like that. And characteristic of Dottie, she said, but that's what high school is for Nathan. It's his boat. He is building a boat. It's called high school. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm still homeschooling him. He needs me just as much as he did as a homeschooled student, now that he's navigating this completely unfamiliar terrain called high school. And that really stayed with me because most of us are aware that anything they do, that our kids do, beyond the home, whether it's high school or college or a brand new job or moving into an apartment, is the big boat. And they're going to rely on us to help them do it. And so if we could move out of our own identity being so tied to whether or not they're living in our house doing, math at the kitchen table, we could support them in doing the thing that enlivens and leads them to a more creative, more expressive, more educated life. For those of you who heard Noah and Johanna sharing on Saturday, they were in a Periscope, so lovely, out on the deck with me. And Noah was saying, he did a little bit of high school at the public school and didn't like it. When he quit, he got involved in a constructed languages community online. He learned Klingon, and then he helped people build languages from scratch, and he loved it. In fact, so much so that when he applied to college, the University of Cincinnati admissions office advised me to put Klingon on his transcript as his foreign language. This is a kid who did education his way. He needed to go out, to come back, to do his own thing. So I share that with you because I'm not trying to say all kids should go to public high school. Absolutely not. What I am saying is, for a kid like Jacob, for example, being in the marching band was like the pinnacle of his life. He got to do amazing things like going to California in the Rose Parade with our local marching band. Katrin, when she was in high school, got to go with the marching band to the Macy's Day Parade. These are unparalleled experiences of community and performance and risk and adventure. So find these things for your kids. They don't necessarily have to be through school, obviously. For Noah, it was behind the screen of a computer, but he had the time and the freedom to pursue that, and that was valuable for him. Okay, so build a boat. All right, F, prepare them for college, maybe. I like to say it like that because not every kid is suited for college. Not everyone wants to go to college. But it's important to create the opportunity. So while they're young, you have a higher responsibility to include college, prerequisites in their lives than when they get closer to the age of college. That'll start to shift because ultimately they have to want to go for college to be meaningful to them. But in the meantime, you do want to provide them with opportunities. They don't want to go to college unless there is, 1, a culture of college in your family, or 2, they've had meaningful experiences on college campuses. For kids who seem disinterested in college, take them to a college football game or basketball game, please, while they're in high school. Go to a college university library and look at the stacks. Research an essay at a college library. Hang out on a campus for a day. Just go get lunch and drink a drink together and experience what it's like to be a part of that environment. They are more likely to want to go if they have a vision for where it is they're going. And if they have friends who are already in college, even better. Let them go visit those friends. For kids who decide not to go to college, help them imagine their future. One of Katrin's best friends didn't go to college, and she ended up being excited about working in the color guard, which she had been a part of in high school. And she worked, a job at Wendy's while she built her skills and relationships to make this happen. And her mother was so supportive and so helpful. And when she got into that program and was hired to work in color guard, that mother called all of us to celebrate the same way we called her when our kids got into college. So the goal is this, vision, helping them cast it and then celebrating when they achieve it. Okay, 2 more, we're almost done. Take your time. They often go at their own pace, a unique pace. Not every kid is ready for college at 18. In my own family, Liam started college at age 20. He was not ready at 18. He took a year off in between to try and figure out what he wanted to do. He traveled to Europe for 6 weeks. These are the things that you do when you are a homeschooler. A lot of kids in the school system don't know that they can take time. They don't know they can take a gap year. But we know that. And I want to encourage you to encourage your kids to take time to explore their dreams or travel to Europe or, go be a nanny in Australia for your best friends who are homeschoolers. Like, Give them a chance to get out of their world and take time. Yes, going to college at 18 isn't magic at all. It's just what most people do. And then the very last thing is, put your kids in touch with mentors and teachers that aren't you. There is nothing nearly as exciting for kids than feedback from other adults telling them they're going to make it. You can do that through a Shakespeare company where your kids are actors. You can do it through online classes at BraveWriter. You can do it through a co-op where there are other homeschooling parents doing the teaching. There are so many ways. You can put them into, the local symphony or ballet or these opportunities for performance communities. These are all ways for your kids to have risk and adventure. They can be in a backpacking group. They can go, to visit their grandparents on the East Coast if you live on the West Coast, and they fly there by themselves. But this is what we want to do for our kids. We want to give them, in their teen years, memorable experiences, fabulous people, and the faith and support that parents can offer. And then you're going to screw it up a whole bunch of times all the way there. And you're going to have to belly up and apologize and take the hit and keep going. And I think we have really maximized this topic today, and I can feel in me that there's more to say, but I don't want to keep you on Periscope any longer. We already have 2 scopes just to manage all this content. So we'll talk about what to do when it all goes wrong with teens sometime down the road. But for now, thank you for coming back. Thank you for listening to the whole scope. If you want to know more about online classes and what I do, check out BraveWriter.com. If you're interested in getting coaching, check out CoachJulieBogart.com and join the Homeschool Alliance, where I give you love and support, and we all help each other out every day. And lastly, for those of you who didn't know, my DVD set is out. It's all my core teachings from the first BraveWriter retreat, and I would love you to have them. They're on sale till the end of October, regularly $99, and you can take this code, OOPS15, to get $15 off. Okay? So love you guys. Thank you so much. Kanye says goodbye. Here he is. Cool Kanye. Enchant your teens. Live honestly. Write bravely. And we will see you on Wednesday, where we're going to talk about reading in all of its facets. Bye, everybody.